Sure, is this Congresswoman Herrell?
It is.
Hey, well, you're on the radio with us. Thank you so much for taking time. I know how busy it is doing what you do now.
Oh, it has been incredibly busy. What a whirlwind! But I'm so grateful to be here and just feel so very honored. So I appreciate you making the time for me.
Yeah. You've been there now. I know you've been to Washington before. I know you've talked to people in Washington throughout your political career. But now that you're actually a member of Congress, do you ever get a chance to just kind of stop and look around where you are and go, wow, this is pretty amazing?
I do. I really do. I just, I even still, when I walk in, even to the Capitol, the House floor, or even into our office, it feels sometimes a little surreal thinking, here I am. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. And I know right now there is so much division and so much uncertainty, and I know everyone is wondering what is going to happen, and I can assure you that we are working so hard, and there's such good men and women here. And the other really interesting thought is it's one thing to be friends or have colleagues like Jim Jordan or Debbie Meadows or Debbie Lesko or, Andy Biggs, these members of Congress that I've always been friends with as far as working with state policy and so forth. But to be here serving with them, it's really incredible. But we are really working hard. In fact, today I'll be going to the Oversight and Reform Committee in just a few minutes, and we'll be submitting several amendments for this next round of COVID relief. There is, of course, so much in this bill that does not make sense for not only New Mexicans, but for Americans. And what's really unfortunate is we know there's over $1 trillion that has not been spent from the previous COVID relief packages. And so we're just saddling our future generations with more and more debt. So we're going to offer several amendments today on our portion of the bill, which is $350 billion is the part we're going to be looking at. And it's just incredible to see how much really fraud, waste. I mean, I don't mean it fraud that some of this doesn't make sense, but the waste that we see in spending does not make sense for the American public.
Sure. I was going to ask you, what committees have you been able to be assigned to? How many did you get picked to be on, and were any of them the ones that were at the top of your list that you wanted to be on?
Actually, I had a real blessing. I actually got both the committees that I wanted, so I landed on natural resources, which is such a great fit for New Mexico, too, because of our public lands, private lands, the tribal lands, water issues, timber issues, the ag operations. I mean, it really just kind of encompasses so much of the district, and that was very exciting to be able to get on natural resources. And then I had asked for the Oversight and Reform Committee because coming from a business background and even in real estate where we're such a heavily regulated industry, it is just, I think, a good fit to be able to point to the government waste and look at regulations. And again, now with this particular committee meeting today, looking at this bill and going through and offering up good amendments that will work for the American people instead of seeing so much fraud be. And I just keep calling it fraud because in my mind, I just feel like when there's just wasteful spending, when we're trying to take government taxpayer money and put it into places that has nothing to do with COVID, I believe it looks fraudulent to me. But so I was very lucky to get both the committees. They had so many freshmen coming in, and they had so many new Republican members that the A committees, such as financial services and energy, they did not put any of the freshmen on those committees, but that's okay. I think natural resources is just a great segue, and certainly with that executive order to ban the drilling or the leasing on public lands is, right in our wheelhouse in New Mexico, and obviously this committee will take a very hard look at that. And we've introduced legislation with Leader McCarthy, with the whip Steve Scalise, and the chairman of Natural Resources, Bruce Westerman, to protect the leases on federal lands. And New Mexico, all the states, they'll stand to lose the most because, well, you know better than I, but, over 60% of our natural gas comes from federal lands, over 50% of our oil production. So we have been standing up and fighting against that, and in fact, have written a letter to the governor pushing on her to stand up and protect our industry. We wrote it on January 25th, and she's yet to respond to us. So last night we heard she was in Washington D.C. today. We tweeted out the letter and said, "Hey, Governor, you're in Washington on Friday. So are we. Come by the office."
Do you need a copy of the letter? I mean, we can give you a copy of the letter to take to the president. Do you need a copy of the letter? We'll bring you one.
Exactly. But it's just unfortunate because, in the entire delegation, we're the only ones standing up saying this isn't just about all the jobs, the suppliers, the communities. It's also about the state budget, the school, the classrooms, the teacher salaries. I mean, so much of New Mexico is connected to the industry, and to think that somehow we're going to go all green energy and be able to backfill the potential 117,000 jobs we could lose doesn't make sense. And so obviously this is a huge push in Washington, and it's not just that particular executive order, it's all of them. And what's even worse is there's no plan to move forward. They just sign these executive orders, stop everything, but no path forward. Instead of, okay, we're not going to do it the way we've traditionally done it, but now here's our way of doing things. And it's the same thing on the border. Mm-hmm. We are in crisis mode on the border. We have introduced a bill to keep the Title 42 program in place, and that's the safety measure that the Border Patrol have used in order to expel people coming here illegally through Mexico or Canada automatically, no questions asked, because of the pandemic. Because they have to go on the assumption that a lot of these people coming across illegally have either been exposed to or have corona or some other infectious disease, and that is strictly just a public health issue. And to me, it does not make sense how our governor could have our state in lockdown. Businesses have closed. The kids are not getting educated. We're still in the mask, and 25. I think I just heard this week they opened up restaurants to 25%. But all this damage we've done to our economy, and then turn the other cheek and not even worry about who's coming across our borders, because they're going to start the catch and release. And in fact, they're putting out a statement today, the Biden administration. They're going to prioritize the remain in Mexico people. There's over 25,000. Those will have priority in getting into the country first. And it's going to be a huge impact to our economy and to our communities. And one thing I will tell you is it will not just be the Lordsburg and Deming communities. It will be further into the state. The Border Patrol has told us that they are going to be busing people further into the state, across the country, in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, pushing these illegals further up so that the burden is not just on those border communities, but it's going to be shouldered by pretty much every community in the state of New Mexico. And we've been working with
it's such an upside down way of looking at things, and it's really frustrating and infuriating to a lot of people, as you know. As far as the oil and gas drilling moratorium, are you finding that there is support from Democrats on this? Is there any kind of possibility that this might get through? Because one thing that I don't know that people realize this, I know you do. Going into the election, a lot of people thought the Democrats in the House would gain seats. And if anything, not a single incumbent Republican was defeated, and Republicans gained seats. And what is the Democrat majority? It's like 10 or 11 votes in the House.
Yeah, the margin's very small. It's under 10. And I do believe that we will see some movement from some of these more moderate Democrats, especially those from energy-producing states, because they're understanding, the pushback that everybody is seeing right now from unions on the Keystone Pipeline, for instance, the business owners. And I really appreciate Leader McCarthy right now. I mean, he's done press conferences all over the country in energy states, and in fact, we're trying to set up one for New Mexico in a few weeks to come out and do press conferences and really keep in the forefront of the message that this is just going to kill so many jobs. And here, President Biden said he wanted to build back and build back better. Well, he took out over 11,000 jobs just with the one executive order on the Keystone Pipeline. And not to mention, this moratorium will cost New Mexico about 60,000 jobs by the end of 2022. And I've been over to the east side, met with the mayors in Hobbs and Carlsbad and Artesia, and some of the business owners, some of the economic development people, and it is already impacting the communities in which rely so heavily. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I'm hopeful that we will see some bipartisanship on some of these issues. In fact, I introduced a bill, and I asked both Representative Holland and Teresa Ledger to sign on to it, which actually exempted New Mexico from that particular executive order, and neither one of them would sign on to the bill. And I just felt like that was very telling, especially when we can all sit here and say, you know, we want more money in the classrooms, we want more infrastructure, we want to provide these services for New Mexico residents and for our children, and this is the path to that revenue, and here they won't even help with it. So yes, we've been the lone voice standing on these principles and on these values that are important to New Mexico second, and New Mexico as a whole.
Yeah, I guess you and I just don't understand, Congresswoman, that, you know, pot and solar and wind are going to fill in all those jobs. Just ask John Kerry; he'll be happy to tell you that. I have a question from a listener here. Wants to know what it would take to get an interstate highway built across eastern New Mexico from Odessa to Las Vegas. Have you ever heard anybody suggest that type of thing? And what do you think about that idea?
I think I have never heard of that idea, and certainly that's something, you know, what's the beautiful thing is now being here, I obviously have friends that sit on transportation and some of the appropriations, and it would be an interesting idea. It'd be a great conversation to have, and whoever it is, please feel free to make sure they can reach out to me so that we can have a more meaningful conversation about it and see. It would probably be a bit of a heavy lift depending on the budget restraints, but it certainly, I think, is always something worth looking at.
Yeah. You know, if you go by the media, the most important congresswoman right now is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the Bronx. Have you had a chance to meet her or any of the other media famous political celebs there in Washington?
It's very interesting here. I've been on the floor with her. I've heard her speak on the House floor. There's not a lot of interaction between the Republicans and Democrats. A lot of it's because most of the Democrats are not here in person. They're voting by proxy. And in fact, I think this is unfortunate because, you know, we were all elected to do the people's business, and we're expecting our essential workers, our police officers, our hospital staff, you know, the folks from the grocery stores and so forth to be at work. And yet they're really taking this proxy voting way too far. In fact, today I'll be in the Oversight and Reform Committee where we'll be looking at providing several amendments to this COVID relief bill. So the Republicans will be in the committee room, and the Democrats will be online. And it's a slow process. There's no cohesion. If they're you know, not in a place where they have a good cell or internet service, then it's very hard to understand. It just doesn't make sense, and it really slows the process down. And my feeling is, if I committed to the state of New Mexico, the 2nd Congressional, to be their voice, and I'm going to be in the committees that are, especially this one, where we're going to be looking at making some changes if we can get them through to this crazy COVID relief package bill. And I believe they should be here as well. So there has not been a lot of interaction. Again, it's very restrictive here. Now they've actually closed the gallery, where you cannot have even one visitor up in the gallery watching the proceedings on the floor. And they still have the fencing up and the wire, the razor wire. And it's just crazy how this looks. This is not what America should be looking like. And there's still a number of guardsmen here, men and women. And the one thing I kind of laugh about, and I said, this is really fascinating. a metal wall with razor wire is a good thing for the Capitol complex, but not a good thing to secure our borders and protect national security and our communities. And then I think about all the men and women here, the police officers here that are armed, and I'm thinking, yeah, they like them here, but they want to defund the police. And then I think, but they all want them armed. They are all very heavily armed, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot go anywhere without seeing. It's just incredible. But yet they want to take our guns away. And so that double standard is what I think is really making people mad. And it gets me, too. It's just, how can it be okay in one way? We can burn down Portland and some of these other communities with, private property, state property, federal property, and have these continued riots. And that's just expression. That's just a First Amendment expression. And then this deal that happened on the 6th, the riot here, that was, that was an insurgent, and Trump, caused all this, and it was I admit it was a horrible thing that happened, but it's so easy. They just so flippantly just turn the other cheek and don't look at what the reality, their reality is this little bubble in Washington, D.C., and unfortunately for them, the American people live in the real world, and they are the ones struggling with paychecks and employment and students, children that need education. And it's like they just forget all that when they're here. And that's why I've been so actively staying engaged with the district, because that's what my role is. And, and it's I'm so thankful to be here and so appreciative. And I said, we have a lot of work to do, but I think this just makes people mad. And I think it starts getting people to come together and start fighting back on these things that are going to be detrimental. And I believe we'll see not just Republicans and not just Democrats. I think we'll see Americans come together and want to change things, because this is going to be detrimental to our country.
Well, it's going to have to change. I mean, and it's been a long time since I've been to Washington, D.C., but one of the most impressive, just neat things about it is that you can walk everywhere.
Yeah.
You can walk from the Capitol across the deal there to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial and all the monuments and museums that are there, and just to picture that now with all these fences and razor wire and everything. It's like, what country is this? That's
right. That's what it looks like. I mean, today when I came in, I came into the Cannon building and then just went down. It's very cold here today, so I went downstairs and got into the tunnel, and I bet you I passed 100 guardsmen. And I'm thinking, they actually beefed it up a little bit, it feels like, this week, and I think it's because of the impeachment hearings. Yeah. But I don't know. I just look at these men and women that are standing out there 24/7, and this week has been very, very cold here. It snowed early, and they are just standing out there, I mean, in little clusters of 4 to 6 every maybe 20 feet, all the way around that perimeter. I just don't see how this is necessary.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why this is so important for them. And the message they're sending is not working, because this is not the America that we all grew up in, that we want to protect. But we started seeing, I think, a taste of that socialistic government when we were all put in lockdown and, couldn't go to church, couldn't do anything. And to me, it feels like we all just complied, because they use that fear factor, and now they, I believe, use in some ways extortion. If you defy what the governor's saying, they'll come take your license, or they'll take your liquor license.
Right. Or you don't care about people's lives. All you care about is money, and you just don't care if people die, because you just only care about money. And it's such a perversion of what's going on.
It is, and you make a great point. I've been accused of just being greedy, because I've been fighting to get these offices or these businesses open. So I was called, I'm just greedy. Well, if we're really talking about saving lives, then why don't we take a look at the number of suicides in our state, how we've seen such a jump in that. They just, again, it's just listening to whatever they want to choose to listen to, but not the whole picture, and not listening to the people. And that's what the frustration is, I believe, for so many people, not just in New Mexico, around the country, that, again, double standard. The things happening here are ridiculous. I mean, and you and I both knew it was not going to be great if we had a different administration and there would be changes. But to the extent of just the sheer just nonsense that happens here. In fact, I told somebody yesterday, I said, I'm going to start the Common Sense Caucus. So
Please
we can
do.
maybe start getting some people together that can actually come in and stand up for what's really right. But I do personally think, as kind of the dust settles, I do think there will be some Democrats that are going to really be smart about these votes and protect the American people. I want to believe that, because I just think there's it's both sides. There are some little fringes at Republicans here that have been very outspoken about Trump and all of this. There's more on the Democrat side for sure, but I do think there's some fringe, more conservative Democrats here that are seeing how just detrimental these executive orders are going to be to the country and to their individual districts, especially if they're coming from a state that has any kind of energy production.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of the education process. I was talking to somebody yesterday that lives in Florida, and I said, you guys you don't worry about federal lands and you don't worry about water. Let me tell you what we in the West have to deal with that you guys don't even think about. Of course, we don't have to think about alligators here, but that's, a small concession.
Right.
Have you got your staff, your folks, your offices in place? I know we're getting close on time here. If for people to get in touch with you or with your representatives, how is that being done now? Have you got your folks in place? Do you have folks here in the district that they can reach out to?
We do, and you know what? We have been so blessed because the district staff and the Washington, D.C. staff are incredible, and I am so grateful to have had the talent and the experience that we have on the Hill, because when all of these executive orders started happening, we have one gentleman who his background is Homeland Security, border security, immigration policies, it's just that wheelhouse that works for New Mexico. Another one of our legislative directors here came from the Western Caucus, so worked on the Western issues in terms of not only oil and gas, but ag operations, water, just, again, things that just are plaguing New Mexico. And then we will actually be opening an office in Roswell. It should have been open by now, but they had to do some remodel to it. So that will be open, I believe, March 1st. Mm-hmm. And then we have another office in Las Cruces. Those are the two we're going to open for now. We'd like to expand that and have an office up like in the Valencia County area. But with the COVID and not sure what's going to happen, I felt like it was smarter to just do mobile office hours. But we have an incredible team both in this district and in D.C. And I tell everybody all the time they are really so important to our office, and to me they've just been so great to work with. But I would encourage people to go to our website, because everything that we do, the tweets, the Facebook posts, the letters we sign on, the legislation, it's real time, and that's just at Herrell, HERRELL.house.gov. So it's www.herrell.house.gov, and then I'm happy to give a phone number for the office here. And I kept my cell phone number, so I know a lot of your listeners have my cell phone number, and I'm happy to I did not change that number. I don't want to change it because too many people have it, and I want those that need to reach me to be able to call me or text me and know that they're getting directly to me. But I also will give the office number here, so if anybody needs to call and just maybe talk to one of our policy people or to me, that number is 202-225-2365. But again, I'm more than willing or happy to have folks just reach out to me direct. And again, my number hasn't changed. It's still that 575-430-2113. I feel it's important.
You're pretty brave.
To be very accessible. Well, you know what? It is, but then at the same time, you know what? My job is to represent the people, and if I don't want to put that layer of separation where folks think, she's in D.C. now, we have to go through 2 or 3 people to get to her. And it's been fine. People had my number when I was a state rep, but it is nice to be able to have someone call me right away, especially when something's happening in New Mexico. For instance, today is the funeral for Officer Jarrett over in Lordsburg. And so I was able to find out about that very quickly. And I actually had wanted to be at the funeral. In fact, I was supposed to fly back last night, but because of these restrictions with COVID, the governor's mandates and the state police, they have limited in fact, they're not allowing anybody to the services except immediate family, and I think a few of the fellow officers that he worked with. And so I didn't want to I'm sure we could have made a big deal about it, but we didn't, because I respect the protocol and the family. But I just hope everybody will take a moment and just think of that family today as they prepare to celebrate his life over in Lordsburg. So, and I just can't say enough about our law enforcement. I mean, I campaigned on standing up and defending our police, but after being here on the 6th and seeing what happened to the law enforcement, for me personally, just even a more appreciation and gratitude for their heroic acts and just what they do every day to keep us safe.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that, for our men and women in law enforcement, and also the ones serving in the in the military keeping our country safe.
Well, it gets tougher and tougher, because sometimes you get mixed signals as to what you're supposed to do from leadership, and I'm talking about at the top, not the local leadership, and that's frustrating for everybody in that position. Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our folks? I know we're going to do this on a monthly basis, or as often as we need to, but anything else you'd like to share with the folks this morning?
No, I can't, again, just am so grateful to be their voice in Washington, D.C., and I just appreciate everyone believing in me, and we are working our tails off here to do things right by our shared values, and I just say keep praying for our country and for our men and women in uniform, and I just, again, just appreciate everybody so very much.
Well, thanks so much for your time. I know it's crazy, but I really do thank you for reaching out, and your folks reaching out to set this up, and we look forward to these visits. And if there's anything else we need to get out to the folks, just let us know, and we'll be here for you, okay?
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and you just have a blessed weekend.
Thanks. Same to you, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye now.
Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, our congressional representative in Washington, D.C., and we just, any of these folks, I mean, they're all busy. They've got lots of people